Good afternoon, Rotarians. Welcome to today's meeting. We have a great program today. We have a world-class speaker, Lee Hussey, who's going to talk to us about polio today. I'm looking forward to hearing what she has to say. But first, I have to ask everyone in the room to rise. We've had a rough 2 weeks. Again, as I say, sadly, we've lost two great Rotarians, humanitarians, and past presidents of this club in the last 2 weeks. We lost Clint Mock and Eric Summons, and may I ask for a moment of silence for these great men, please. Thank you. If you'd remain standing. We're going to have our reflection from Mike George and the pledge from Brent Kuzno.
Let us pray. Let us remember that we are a fellowship of Toledo leaders engaged in service to our local and world community. As Rotarians, we must live our lives as a beacon to guide others in their journeys. Bless those who risk so much to help those in need. Keep them safe as they deliver not only life-saving medications, but a gift far greater, the gift of love. As you showed us the true meaning of love, so will our actions show our neighbors, both near and far, the love that has no end. We thank you for the gifts of healing, love, and courage, but most of all, we thank you for those who put service above self. Amen.
Our meeting sponsor this month is Niehaus, Callis, and Hinshaw. I didn't see Scott anywhere, but if he is, thank you, Scott, if you're out there somewhere. We have a very full agenda today, and we want to leave time for questions. I want to say welcome to Carolyn Houston, our district governor. We also have past district governors, a future district governor. We have a full agenda, so I won't go through all of that. We also have a joint meeting with the Maine Rotary Club. Sharon, where are you? Thank you very much for bringing your team with you. Welcome to the Maine Rotarians. I have heard good things about your club and then other stuff. Thank you all for coming. Anyone who brought guests, I'm going to forego the normal practice of introducing the guests. Let me just say welcome to everyone. I hope you have a great meeting today. Moving right along, Danny Woodcock, are you here somewhere? Would you come to the floor, Mike? Well, if we had Danny Woodcock here, there he is. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to real briefly give a plug for our Axe Out Polio event this Thursday. From 5:30 to 8:30, we will have the Axe 419 facility for ourselves. It's a fundraiser for us on World Polio Day. We are very fortunate to have a match from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, matching everyone's dollars 2 to 1. You'll see a video up here. It's very safe. It's a lot of fun. Come out and throw some axes with us. They'll be supplying us with, whoa. I heard you
Okay. Okay, where did you say this is?
Again, it's this Thursday from 5:30 to 8:30 at the Axe 419 facility in Rossford. Mark Arudia said he's really good and he doesn't think anyone can beat him, but we'll see how it goes. Mike Noble and I have been going around the district inviting all of our clubs, so we invite you to come help foster great relations with the rest of our district at the Axe Out Polio event this Thursday. And one last thing, President Tim, when I went to the Maine Rotary Club, they did something really fun. They had a Jello shots fundraiser at lunch. So I would just like to, keep the ideas flowing.
I'll say Jello shots.
Jello shots, get it? Shots.
So you're telling me that you went to the Mommy Rotary Club and you had a good time?
We had a great time.
Well, just a few comments
Yeah.
before you go. This Axe Out Polio at 419 Axe, what is it near in Rossford?
The Cabela's or the outdoor facility, I forget which one is out in Rossford. It's very near that. Bass Pro, thank you.
Bass Pro.
did
Okay,
that
well,
last
that's
night,
really
too.
good to know. The other thing regarding Mommy,
Yeah.
Mommy is a good club. Let's just say it's a great club. We have partnered with them on many things, both domestic and international, and they're a great club. But the fact is, they can be a little wild. They can be a little loose. And while I respect them raising money by doing Jello shots at their club, our goal today is to do polio shots. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I saw Dick Wolf somewhere.
Thank you, President Tim. President Tim, I have a vision of you. You were a rock and roller. You are a rock and roller, aren't you, President Tim? I mean, I can see you back in the 60s, with long hair, with hair, in your VW minivan, cruising down the Trans-Canada Highway, listen to the Guess Who, Neil Young, those artists. Well, we've got a great opportunity for you and everybody here. On November 16th, that's a Saturday, the Fellowship Committee is putting together a trip to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland. It's going to be a bus trip. We're going to meet downtown, get on the bus around 8:30, and we'll get to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame around 10:30. We'll be there. We'll have lunch there on your own. And then we're going to arrange for a dinner spot to go to and probably have dinner on our own because there'll be a number of people there. But it's a whole day event, Saturday, November 16th. You can sign up now at Rotary.org, ToledoRotary.org. And there'll be some more specific details coming. But if you've never been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it is a blast. And President Tim, I hope to see you there.
I'm looking forward to it. What day did you say it was again?
It's Saturday, November 16th.
And where are people going to muster?
We're going to be mustering downtown. We don't have the exact location, but it might be right here at the Park Inn. We're going to have probably a couple buses, Black and White, one of our sponsors and a member is going to be providing those buses. So there'll be more details specifically when Chuck Mann gets back in. He is heading this up.
And before you sit down, I want to tell you your comments about my lack of hair. Don't worry about my feelings. It's not a problem. As a young man, I lost my hair. And one of the things I discovered, because I was interested in girls, I never ran into a circumstance where some girl at least didn't want to touch it. Thank you, Dick.
Well, thank you for that vision, President Tim.
Okay. As some of you may know, Danny Woodcock and I were on the Jerry Anderson show this week. We were shown a couple times, and we were advocating for polio and for the Toledo Rotary Club. That's one of the things we're trying to do increasingly is be seen as advocates in the community. And I thought we did okay. Just let me try that again. We did great. Is Shireen in the audience?
No, she's not.
Well, sadly, she's not here. She was on the Fred Lefevre show last week. They liked her so much they put her on twice. And again, she was advocating for the Toledo Rotary Club and for membership. And if you happen to see Shireen, she was a rock star. Really did a good job. So if you happen to be talking to her. We've talked about Axe Out Polio. That is going to be our signature event for the eradication of polio this year. And as Danny just said, $20 entrance fee, there's going to be food. $20 is going to produce $60 per attendee, so thank you in advance for coming. You just heard what Dick had to say about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That should be a fun event. I'm planning on going. And Stephanie, the 180th, what are they doing?
President Tim, as we approach Veterans Day coming up in November, we're going to take Rotary on the road to the 180th on November 4th. It's going to be a little bit longer than normal. If you can arrive between 11:30 and 11:45, I think, to get through the gates and get through security, and we'll be finished by 1:30. It's $15. You have an email today where you have to go and sign up, and you have to sign up because we need your name and everything. You'll have to show your ID card and everything. But I encourage you to take advantage of this opportunity. Not only will you get to go behind the scenes at the 180th and hear from, I'm not sure who the speaker is going to be. Have they decided?
I don't know.
Somebody, is it Ed? Okay. We'll get a behind-the-scenes tour of the 180th. You'll get to touch and feel the jet airplanes and even climb up in them. But additionally, this year, we have a 9/11 memorial at the 180th. I don't know if anybody's had the opportunity to see that. It is incredibly impactful. It just opened about a year ago. There is a beam from the towers in New York. There is limestone from the Pentagon. There is soil from the ground in Pennsylvania. And it was designed by a couple of our fighter pilots who were actually up in the air, called into the air on 9/11. And it is really a powerful, touching memorial. So I encourage you guys to sign up and go. I think we have 51 people so far, but sign up via your email.
Would some wild and crazy people from Maumee be invited to that?
Sure.
But they would have to get reservations. We
They
need
would have to.
reservations because of security issues.
Yes, and I did tell Cheryl I would forward on the information. And please remember to bring your ID, leave any handguns, and even any medically approved drugs at home, because they will be checking your cars.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Gary Brown, would you please come forward and introduce a new member?
They're telling me that we're restricted on time, and so I want everybody to take a good gander here at Luke King. And one of the things that he told me to make sure that you folks realize he is a king. Luke has spent most of his adult life overseas working in different areas. And in almost every place that he's worked, it's been a problem area. And he's given literally lots and lots and lots of help to a whole bunch of people. Luke is just a great, great guy, and I really would encourage you to get to know him and to spend a little time with him because he's worthwhile. Luke is married to a young gal by the name of Amy, a native of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and they are delighted parents of 16-year-old twins, Rex and Winnie. And he told me if they had another set of twins, that they would be named, at least one of them, after me. So just for your info. Luke has returned from overseas, and he's working with the New York Life with his dad. And his dad has been a New York Life agent for 30 years, and Luke has been part of that organization. And I just promise you, he's going to do super, super, super duper things. So please, please, please make an extra special effort to meet Luke. And the only other bad thing about him, though, is he is a Ohio State grad and a Michigan grad. Michigan grad. And the only thing he said to me that really was disturbing to me, he said that there was a lot of the books in the Michigan library that weren't yet colored.
Luke, right this minute, you are the newest Rotarian in the world. You've joined 1.2 million Rotarians, and you happen to have joined the very best club. Just a few thoughts. After you've been with us for a little while, if you have twins, I think the names, one should be Paul and Harris. And here's your pin. Welcome to our club. Always like to see new members. Mr. Gary Murphy, would you join us at the podium for an announcement and an award?
Thank you, President Tim. On behalf of the Toledo Rotary Club Foundation, it's my pleasure today to present a check in the amount of $6,284 to the Toledo Day Nursery. The grant will provide funding for Tot Town, a playground piece of equipment specifically for toddlers. Our Youth Services Committee members received the request, participated in the venting process, and made the decision to recommend the grant, which was approved by our club and the foundation trustees. It is due to the countless Toledo Rotarians who give unselfishly, which enables us to provide these grants. Thank you to everyone here who continues to support our Toledo Rotary Club Foundation so we can continue to aid in supporting the needs of the community. Dr. Karen McCoy, president of Toledo Day Nursery, is here to accept the grant and share a short description of how her foundation will use the $6,284. Karen?
Thank you. I just want to first off say thank you so very much for this check. We are located in 4 different places throughout Toledo. Toledo Day Nursery is the oldest early childhood program in Ohio, and we serve children and families that live in poverty. And I know, again, I also was told to keep it very short. So I just want to tell you just a couple of stories about our reality. This morning, I went into the classroom to talk with a parent that I needed a paper from. And so I said, "Good morning, do you have that paper?" And she said, "I need to run out right now and go get a drug test. I'll bring you the paper later." Last week on Thursday, I got a phone call from one of our families, a mom saying, "I can't really go into a lot of details, but we are now living in a situation where I had to move very quickly. I cannot bring my child back because I have no clothes and I have no diapers for him." And I assured this mom, "Go ahead, come on in, bring your baby. We will get clothes, we will get diapers," and the baby did return to us. So that's just a sample of, truly, in the last few days, of the families that we do work with. And so when we are able to put in this Tot Town that cost over $6,000, we are providing for our children experiences that they're not able to get at home. So I truly, truly thank you for making it happen.
Karen, it's an honor to know you and to work with your organization. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Joe Tefelsky, would you come to the mic, please, and make an introduction?
Thanks, President Tim. As World Polio Day approaches this Thursday, we're really honored to have Lee Hussey as today's guest speaker. We could not have a better speaker to help commemorate Rotary's success in eradicating polio around the world and what we need to finish the job. She is a distinguished global leader in the campaign to eradicate polio and both a personal friend of President Tim and myself. I first met Ann in 2005
when I participated with Rotary in a National Immunization Day in India. She was a co-leader of our group. After working with her, it became obvious that she was someone very special. Her leadership, knowledge, compassion, and passion were inspiring. So much so that I volunteered for 2 more trips to Niger and Nigeria. The trip to India was only one of 30 in which Ann Lee has participated. The overwhelming majority of these trips have been to remote countries like Chad, Mali, Bangladesh, Niger, Nigeria, Madagascar, where the need is truly overwhelming. She has been the leader in 26 of these trips. You see, polio is personal to Ann Lee. She contracted the disease when she was 17 months old. As a survivor, she has made polio eradication her life's work. She never wants another child to endure what she has gone through. Her story is powerful and inspirational. What she has done is truly phenomenal. Not only does she work in the trenches, she also works at high levels of boardrooms and with government leaders. In addition to her NID trips, Ann Lee has also raised millions of dollars for polio eradication, raised public awareness, served as a global leader and ambassador, and inspired so many others to join the fight. And it truly is a fight. She has shared her story hundreds of times with numerous community groups at Rotary Zone, District, and local club events around the world, including the Rotary International Assembly in 2017, 2018, and 2019. She is not just committed to the eradication of polio, but also for support of survivors. She formed the Rotary Polio Survivors Action Group and serves as its executive director. Ann Lee has been recognized many times for her work. She has received the Rotary Service Above Self Award, the International Service Award for a Polio-Free World, a Woman of Action by the World Bank, and a Champion of Change by President Obama. Ann Lee is a member of the Rotary Club of Portland, Maine, Sunrise. She served also as a district governor. She and her husband, Michael, also a Rotarian, live in South Berwick, Maine. Until their recent retirement, Ann Lee worked as a veterinary technician with her husband at their veterinary clinic. She also serves as a trustee of the York Hospital in York, Maine. Let's give a warm Toledo Rotary welcome to Ann Lee Hussey.
Thank you, Joe, for that very warm introduction. And maybe I should sit down while I'm ahead. First of all, I'd like to say, welcome, Luke. You've joined an organization that's going to change your life, and you will get out of it exactly, or more so, what you put into it. So work hard. Stay with us. Thank you. And Karen, thank you for what you do with children. Anybody who helps children is a hero in my eyes. Thank you very much. Tim, in the words of Dolly Parton, just because you've lost your fuzz, don't mean you ain't a peach. Okay, and on that note, now we can get serious. Thank you very much for having me back. I think I was here maybe 6 years ago, and I feel it's a real privilege to be here at the Rotary Club at Toledo, and I do appreciate your invitation. I also appreciate everything that you do. This club is rather amazing, and thank you. Thank you for your efforts and for your contributions. I'm going to tell you my story today in hopes that you get a better feeling and a better sense of purpose of what we're doing with polio eradication. So life is 10% what happens to you, and 90% how you respond to it. And this is my story. On April 12th, 1955, Dr. Thomas Francis Jr. declared from the University of Michigan, "It works. The vaccine works. It is safe, effective, and potent." And with these words, a global joy spread around the world when the world realized that they could see the end of the crippling polio virus. With that announcement, many mass immunizations were held across the United States. But within a few weeks of the Salk vaccine announcement, there came a bad vaccine batch, a couple of them, from California, from Cutter Labs, in which the vaccine was found to have actually caused polio. Thankfully, that's not the case with this injectable vaccine today, and so no parent should worry about their child. So at the time that this happened, the U.S. government suspended polio campaigns that had been ongoing for several weeks. And as a result, in the summer of 1955, one of the hottest summers on record with temperatures topping 100, Boston, Massachusetts, suffered the worst polio epidemic in its history. Because of the fear of the polio attacking their children, families used to travel to more rural areas and actually brought the polio virus to my home state of Maine. And before the year 1955 came to a close, 985 children and adults in the United States would contract polio, and I was one of them. Just 3 months after the vaccine announcement, my journey with polio began at the tender age of 17 months in South Berwick, Maine, where I live today. I am the youngest of 5 children and the only one obviously affected. My mother instantly recognized that I had polio because as a toddler just starting to walk, I began to stumble more often, and I had difficulty moving my legs. With a burning fever, I was taken to the hospital. Unfortunately, my mother had already lived through such a frightening experience as she watched her younger brother, Marlon, contract polio when he was 5 years old. I spent several months in the hospital, initially paralyzed from the waist down. Much of this paralysis disappeared as the fever broke, but it left behind damaged nerves, which resulted in weak and useless muscles. Even today, I cannot imagine how my mother must have felt looking down at her baby child, or the agony that my parents endured seeing their child go through years of physical limitations and rehabilitation, all the while caring for my 4 older siblings. When I returned home from the hospital, it was my mom who massaged and moved my legs every 3 hours around the clock, determined to have her baby girl walk. I owe so much to my mother, and in many ways, I am who I am today because of her. Since I was so young, I really can't recall the frightening experience. My earliest recollections are of my many surgeries, constant physical therapy, both at a rehab center 3 times a week, as well as at home. And in childhood, I wore a brace on my right leg that attached to the heel of my shoe and went up to my hip. I've had multiple surgeries consisting of 32 procedures. My right leg remains shorter, weaker, and overall smaller than my left, and has left me with a marked limp. I wear special inserts inside my shoes, as well as the lift on my right shoe. And I've lived with a limited range of motion in both my ankles, the right being surgically fused at a very early age, the left exhibiting what was known as a typical dropped polio foot, where you basically walked on the ball of your foot, up until my last major surgery in 2009. I've lived through the taunting of childhood peers, of being different, and today I embrace being different, the mimics of my walk, through the continuing staring eyes, even now as I walk down the hall, the frustration of buying shoes, especially as a woman, the challenge that climbing stairs always presents, when cripple was still a common term, and much, much more. Today, I am able to walk with limitations. And although I have residual damage in both my legs with daily challenges to face, I am extremely fortunate to be standing here before you. And when I contracted polio, it was a time when the local papers used to run a list of the names of folks who were ill. And my illness was in the Portland paper, and a Mrs. Woodbury of Brunswick read about me. She promptly sat down and wrote my mom a letter, and thus began a long relationship between the two of them, with me as the main topic. And when I was old enough, I began to write her letters myself. And when arthritis crippled her hands, she pecked out her letters on an old typewriter. And every time I was in the hospital, I would receive a postcard daily from Mrs. Woodbury. And on every holiday, however small the occasion, as well as on my birthday, I would receive a card from Mrs. Woodbury. And in those cards, she always tucked $2. Now that may not sound like a lot of money today, but I remember the first time I ever visited Mrs. Woodbury at her home. She and her husband lived simply and were not wealthy, not monetary-wise anyway. But Mrs. Woodbury was rich in heart. She is my best example of what living in Maine is all about. My best example of how people and communities pull together to offer support, even when separated by many miles. You see, Mrs. Woodbury continued to write me letters and send me cards for 35 years until her death. Mrs. Woodbury taught me the meaning of giving, and most importantly, the art of receiving. And unbeknownst to both of us, she helped to lay the foundation for me to join Rotary. Never underestimate the impact that you may have on one individual's life through a simple act of kindness. Because an ordinary life can be extraordinary, and that magic can be found in the everyday. So it seemed only natural that when I learned of Rotary's initiative to end polio, that I should become involved. So I traveled to India on my very first National Immunization Days campaign in January of 2001, before I joined Rotary. And there I witnessed firsthand the devastation that polio was still bringing to the people of India. I saw crawlers, young and old, dragging themselves by their hands and their arms, begging in the streets, their legs twisted in unimaginable contortions. Some actually wore sandals on both their hands and their feet, walking on all fours like animals, stripped of their dignity. I was shocked and saddened, and I soon realized how fortunate I was to have had polio in the United States and not in the slums of India. It was on this first trip that my team visited a rehabilitation clinic. And as is customary when visitors come, they want to show off the good work that they do. And on this particular day, they paraded out a group of school children, all polio survivors, all with assistive devices of one sort or another. But there was a particular young girl about the age of 9 who caught my eye as she slowly limped past me. She had an amazing smile, and I can still see her smiling today. As I returned her smile, I looked down at her leg showing beneath her dress. And there I saw the same thin right leg, the same heavy metal brace, and in an instant, I was 9 years old again. As I looked back up at her face with tears streaming down my cheeks, she smiled at me, seeming to understand my personal pain. And I'm not ashamed to say that I cried. I cried for her, I cried for me, I cried for all the senseless waste that polio has brought to so many for so long. And I could hear my Uncle Marlon's voice as I left for this trip, telling me that if I could prevent just one child from the crippling effects of polio, that I will have done my job. Well, at that moment, shared with this little girl, I knew that I had to do whatever I could to protect more children from this crippling disease. and that was the first of my many Rotary moments. And since that first trip, I have organized and led volunteer teams, as you've heard, to participate in polio campaigns in over 10 countries, completing my 30th trip last November. But it's not about the number of trips, and it's not just because I'm a polio survivor. I go because I believe that polio eradication will be one of the greatest gifts we give to all future generations. Every trip I've taken has provided greater insight and understanding into the challenges we have faced over the last 33 years. And it's given me a deeper appreciation for those who work on the polio program year-round. With every NID polio campaign, there are tens of thousands of volunteers who set out to deliver the vaccine to every child under the age of 5 at their doorsteps. Many of them living in some of the most dangerous and remote places on Earth. Vaccinators travel however they can, on camel, on horseback, on bicycle, in boats, but mostly on foot. And the vaccine travels with them in boxes slung around their shoulders. And each day, their routes take them many miles to seek out villages and settlements. Those workers brave the burning heat of the dry season, the torrential rains of the monsoons. On the high mountains of Pakistan, they face blizzards with chest-high snow. And where there is conflict, they face guns. It is without question the many health workers around the world, 80% of whom are women, who are the unsung heroes on the polio front. And without them, we would not be where we are today. My trips have exposed me to the many needs existing in the developing countries, including those needs of thousands of polio survivors and the challenges that they face daily. This has led to some projects to provide mobility to those left crawling on the ground with the gift of tricycle wheelchairs. My teams and I have supported tricycle wheelchair shops in Nigeria through Rotary grants. And although I have presented tricycle wheelchairs to many, it is now, every time, an extremely emotional experience for me. Take just a moment and imagine a woman covered with the dust of the streets, with calluses so thick on her hands and knees from dragging herself around. Imagine her reaching up and pulling herself up onto the seat of this tricycle wheelchair, reaching down, lifting first one limp leg and then the other, and then putting her hands up on those pedals in front of her, and at last beginning to move herself forward. For the first time, this woman is mobile, off the ground, her dignity restored. And there is a smile on her face like no other. And it's that smile that continues to motivate me to do more. And there have been sad times, as when a scheduled team visit to the governor of Kaduna State ended up being a condolence visit to his wife after losing her husband in a helicopter crash just 2 days before. She kept our appointment. She wanted to see us because we were Rotary, and we shed tears together. And I have witnessed the strength of a mother's love when a Muslim woman would quietly allow me to immunize her child when her husband was not at home, but not mark his finger for fear of being discovered. And I remain impacted by the sharp contrast, the renowned beauty of faraway lands, and the images of suffering children. And I have experienced guilt. Guilt that I am wealthy enough to be among the givers and not the takers. Guilt that, but by the grace of God, I was born in a safe, secure town with medical care and not in the slums of a forgotten city. Guilt that there have been times when I actually wished I had more, when now I'm looking out at those who have nothing. But most importantly, I have looked into the eyes of thousands of children, and I know why it's so important for our program to succeed. Good stories make our history. And it is vital for the generations of any age to learn of the disease that has shaped human history for centuries. I'm asking you today to tell Rotary's story. Be the best Rotary polio advocate that you can possibly be. And as the story of polio continues to be written, make sure that you are a part of it. You don't have to do what I do. You don't even have to go on an NID if you don't want. But what I'm asking you to do is to do something. Advocate, create awareness, fundraise, and make a contribution yourself. And when you do that, you too become a part of making history. In addition to my NID travels, my numerous speaking opportunities have taken me around the globe, and I have been privileged to have participated with Rotary's International PolioPlus Committee, as well as committees of the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, that has provided me a bit further insight into the logistics that drive our polio program. Because of Rotary, I am a proud active player in the eradication efforts. Just imagine how powerful an idea, how powerful a story, the eradication of a human disease. What is the value of participating in the largest ever private public health initiative that has gained the support of 200 nations and 5 powerful partners, such as Rotary, the World Health Organization, Centers for Disease Control, and UNICEF, as well as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation? That value, priceless. Our polio program has come a long ways from when we started with 125 countries and 350,000 being permanently crippled every day. And there are challenges yet to face ahead of us. But the Global Polio Eradication Initiative will remain the standard against all future multilateral public-private partnerships. You see, we play a role in the largest peacekeeping mission ever. And the second time ever that human dedication and ingenuity has brought the scourge of a disease to the brink of extinction. In a world fraught with dissension and folly, our success shines, and it proves that together we can work across borders for the benefit of all. Our common future, Rotary's common future, is at stake, and all of us have a role to play. You see, Rotary's future programs and partnerships depend upon our success, depends upon our reputation with polio eradication. We have earned respect on the world stage. We are trusted, and we need to maintain that. We need to keep our commitments because Rotary's values are our core. Playing an active role in Rotary's eradication program has given me a chance, an opportunity to make a real and lasting difference in the lives of the world's children. But it's also made a tremendous difference in me personally. Together, we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. As an advocate for polio eradication, for immunizations, and for polio survivors everywhere, my life seems to have come full circle. The people I've met, the wonderful friendships, the endless opportunities and experiences, the pinch-me moments that I have everywhere. A lifetime of memories, and so much more that this little girl from Maine ever dreamt possible. But a couple of summers ago, I met a new friend named Carol. Carol and I contracted polio at different ages, but in the same year during the same epidemic, but with different results. Just shy of her 6th birthday, on her first day of school, Carol put her head down on her desk because she had a bad headache, and her teacher sent her home. A spinal tap, just like I had, quickly tested positive for polio. Her brother and her sister also tested positive, as did my 4 siblings, but the only symptoms they had were a mild fever. For the next 2 years, Carol remained in hospitals and rehab centers, living in an iron lung. Now 69, Carol has spent the last 63 years of her life flat on her back, spending brief times on a respirator outside of the iron lung, but the majority of her time in the iron lung. And she lives back on the home farm where her parents took care of her, and her mother still does. She can move one finger, the index finger on her left hand, and has mastered the computer, educating herself. She's a remarkable woman. I'd like to share with you a passage from a memoir that she wrote about her experiences. In 1956, My Fair Lady was a recent Broadway hit, and one of the women in the ward owned a 45 RPM recording of it. For those of you really younger, ask me afterwards. Which she played often enough so that Kathy and I, Kathy's the girl in the iron lung next to her, learned all the words to the songs. I wonder if any of the adults hearing us sing I Could Have Danced All Night was moved by the poignancy of those words on the lips of 2 little girls who would never again walk, much less dance. I also want to share one of her poems with you. Left by my parents in a hospital room in isolation. The dark of their going, the dark of my staying. Weeks isolated from those without the virus. My baby brother learning to take steps. My body learning not to walk. I have a sign that hangs in my kitchen at home that reads, "Gratitude turns what we have into enough." I have enough. As a person with polio, I remain committed to our cause, and every step I take is my reminder why we must eradicate polio. Every child you know, every child you see, should be your reminder. As Albert Sabin, creator of the oral polio vaccine, indicated, the true luster is to be found not in setting the goal, but in having the courage to take every step needed to reach that goal. Please walk these final footsteps with me. It will take continued perseverance, wisdom, and dedication. And it will take the heart of a Mrs. Woodbury. Thank you.
Will you take a few questions?
Sure. Could I have a drink of water?
I feel futile in your presence, but I have a question for you. I think we would like a comment or two as to the challenge yet ahead of us.
And I don't blame you. The challenge ahead of us is in Pakistan and Afghanistan, obviously, the last really 2 countries where the wild polio virus is still circulating. And as you all know, there have been some increased cases, a rise in the number of cases in Pakistan. That has resulted for many reasons. There's been a change in government leadership, though I do think that Imran Khan is he's on board and he's determined to see polio to the end. But even on lower levels, they've had some change. UNICEF and World Health also had different changes in leadership. And not that that's bad, but it just all happened at once. And so sometimes that just puts delays in the program. But one of the bigger challenges was an individual who started a rumor that the vaccine was causing children to be very ill and to die. And he somehow enlisted the help of 3 different schools to have children feign sickness. And in a country like that, it spreads quickly. And so parents started bringing their children to the hospitals thinking that there was something wrong, and it just sort of snowballed, all because it was a lie. It was false. It was a false story. On the good side, that individual has since been arrested, and all 3 of those schools are closed. And so they are now doing cleanup work, working to bring back the confidence to the parents of these children that the vaccine is safe. We have on board now, from the Muslim side, a very strong edict telling them that the vaccine is safe and urging them to vaccinate. So even though we are seeing a little bit of a setback, and you will see a rise in numbers even beyond what it is, that will eventually come back. And so that's the biggest. Afghanistan, we have to deal with terrorist groups. Taliban currently has a ban on door-to-door immunizations, and it has been a restriction on having outside help, which is what WHO and UNICEF do. They come in, technical expertise, and they help with the training and the setup of the campaigns. And so there's been a little bit of a weakness in the campaigns over there because of their lack of being able to be out on the streets helping with that. And then there's just plain access in an area that's geographically really hard, difficult to manage. So I hope that gives you a little more insight. I don't want you to be alarmed. We've had setbacks before. If you look back in history, just before India was declared polio-free, there was a huge spike in the number of cases that came out of India, huge. And then all of a sudden, they reinforced and they tackled it. And the individual, Hamid Jafar, I don't think I have his name right, Hamid Jaffrey, who worked in India at the time and finished that work, is now helping in Pakistan. And he's a good man, he's a wise man, and we have confidence that we're going to see some improvement there soon. And before I end that, I want to end on a good note. Nigeria, as you know, has finished 3 years without a polio case. If all goes well, we'll see a certification probably in March. World Polio Day itself on Wednesday, there should be an announcement that polio type 3 is officially gone, and that leaves just the type 1. So we've made so much progress that I don't want people to get hung up on the challenges. But I can't honestly, we're going to need a couple more years. I'll be honest with you on that. Yes.
Dr. Lee Hussey, thank you again for being here with us today.
Oh, thanks.
My question is related, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And that is, you mentioned going to some of these, very remote and very dangerous locations, you and the other immunizers. And I'm curious if you could give us a feel how you're received, or if you feel welcome by some or most, despite the challenges.
I would have to say that overall, we are welcomed. There are a few. I mean, we've run into resistance in any country that I've been in. Just for an example, Chad, which I think is probably one of the more dangerous spots that I've been in, and this good man came with me on one of my trips, but I've been there twice. But there was an instance where I worked in the market, and I was with a rotaractor who spoke French. I don't speak French, but he and I seemed to communicate just fine. I worked with a health team there, and I was out in the streets. You saw the picture of the baby on the donkey that I was immunizing. And being a go-getter that I am, I was out there for the next round, and there was, all of a sudden the rotaractor just took me. He said, no, and he pulled me away and pulled me off to the side. And he couldn't say, because I couldn't understand him, but he indicated with his eyes a group of men over there that were not happy. So, yeah, there are people who don't want us there, but that's very, very few compared to the majority.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the other thing we tell them, we're volunteers. So it's the health workers that are there all the time, that are the heroes, but we come in to thank those people and to validate the work that they're doing. And I think that's really important. And then we make them understand that we're there on our own money, that nobody sent us. We've just come as volunteers who care about their children. Hope that helps you.
It does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very compelling and concerning story of what used to be the way before scientific research solved the problem of polio vaccines. I had high school friends that were impacted by polio in Western New York, in a very rural area as well. I'm curious here, how many people in this room have had an impact of family or friends or even themselves of polio in the United States?
That's very common.
That's
Almost
very
every hand
common.
goes up.
So, and I remember the first vaccine that I received was 1961, and it was the Sabin oral vaccine, I believe. And so from
63, but yeah.
63 was it?
Yeah.
Well, this was 61, so it must have been something else.
Well,
anyway.
they could have been the trials that came out. There were children that were.
I was in a university time.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that I think that the eradication of polio, in addition to the development of penicillin, which happened in 1943, are probably the two most important scientific developments in health and community services in the recent history. So thank you for recognizing that, and thank you for taking this around the world.
You're very welcome. And to follow that up, I would say that as a Rotarian, you should also be an advocate for childhood vaccinations right here in your own community. Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for everything today. It was very moving. Can you just speak about the different strands? You talked about 3 and 1, and my understanding is that there are some that have popped up in other countries that are maybe 2 or 1 different strands than just polio itself, if you will.
Well, there are 3 strains of polio, which we discovered in the process of trying to come up with a vaccine way back in the 50s. And so they all act in different ways. And as I said, we will have eliminated 2 of those strains. Basically, have eliminated 2 of those strains. But I think what you're referring to are the vaccine-derived viruses. As you may or may not know, the oral vaccine is a modified live. And sometimes it seems like a lot because we're reporting those cases now, but it's not a lot in the bigger picture. And they will mutate, that vaccine will mutate because it's a modified live that is in the body at the time, and it will sometimes mutate and come out as a different strain. As long as the children in that area are immunized, there is no risk. So a vaccine-derived poliovirus is only dangerous if the children are not vaccinated. But we are seeing that in some of the poorer countries of Africa, parts of Asia, just recently in the Philippines. We're in a country who's been polio-free for quite some time, gets a little lackadaisical, doesn't hold their routine immunizations as regularly or as completely as they ought to, and that gives that opportunity for that virus to come up. And that's what scares me about even here in North America. People don't understand the intricacies of not vaccinating. We're only protected now, our children are only protected now because of the herd health, because the majority are vaccinated. But as that number begins to wane, the same thing could happen here as it's happening over in Africa. It's very real. Well, thank you for those questions, very insightful. Thank you.
Wow. And Lee, you remind me one more time of why I am so very proud to be a member of Rotary, the stuff that we do and the stuff that you do. Thank you very much for joining us. You'll be pleased to know that all of our speakers, you included, we will make a contribution to the PolioPlus Fund in your name. And we also have a book, in part written by Clint Mock, whose name you saw today, about the historical tales of Toledo. It's a great book. He was a great Rotarian, and I'm sure he would be proud for you to have it. Thank you very much. Dick and Danny Woodcock, Dick Wolf, and Stephanie, would you mind staying around for just a few minutes in the hallway for anyone who wants to talk about the 180th Rotary on the Road, or the, what are those people with hairdo? Oh, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, yeah. And Axe Out Polio is coming up this Thursday. And if you guys would stick around and answer any questions, I would greatly appreciate it. We're not going to have a chuckle this week. We are going to have next week. Next week, we're going to have Debbie Williams from Dolly Parton's Imagination Library as our speaker. And with that, we are adjourned.